You may have noticed there's a lot of conversation around the Supreme Court since Justice Breyer announced his retirement recently. In fact, I actually feel like there has been more buzz around the Supreme Court in the last few years than I remember in my entire life before that. Obviously, the loss of Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, the appointments of Kavanaugh and Amy Coney Barrett, the highly politicized rulings on everything from voting rights to abortion. I wouldn't say it's all been exactly good buzz. And in fact, a recent Quinnipiac poll shows that the approval rating for the Supreme Court is at an all-time low, with only 37% of voting age Americans approving of the job that the court is doing. So much of this dissatisfaction comes from the perception, fair or not, that the court, which should be free from politics, has become a partisan game. But surely all judges aspire to judge fairly, without bias, without bowing to ideological or political pressures. Now, all of this can be embodied in one detail that might come across as very superficial, but it isn't, namely, their dress. Judges wear robes. It's one of the few professions that has a uniform like this, and it's been the sartorial tradition for hundreds of years. The origin of robes for judges dates back far before America was even a country. Early American judges used to wear colorful robes, ones that identified them often with their alma mater. But Chief Justice John Marshall, who served from 1801 to 35, arguably the most influential justice to ever sit on the court, he changed the practice. Justice Amy Coney Barrett explained, John Marshall, at his investiture, decided to wear a simple black robe. Pretty soon, the other justices followed suit. And now, all judges do it, she said. I think the black robe, she continued, shows that justice is blind. It shows that once we put it on, we are standing united symbolically, speaking in the name of the law, not speaking for ourselves as individuals. That is a wonderful aspiration, all embodied in a simple garment. Is it possible that clothing could have this kind of an influence, both on the wearer of the garment as well as those who see the person in the uniform? Well, our ancient Israelites certainly thought that this was the case as well. This week's Torah portion, Tetzaveh, is filled with copious verses, really almost the entirety of the portion, with incredibly detailed descriptions of the clothing for the priests, their breastplate, robe, tunic, sash, headpiece, and ephod, which is a fancy name for a priest's apron. Things got very messy in there with those sacrifices. So now, why all of the attention to their clothing? The Torah gives a version of that modern axiom, the clothes make the man. The rabbis, they say that the purpose of the vestments is l'chavod ultiferet, for honor and dignity. But the garments do so much more than just make the priests look dignified and honorable to the Israelites. They actually serve as critical signifiers for the priests themselves on what their true role is and how they could do it with as much fairness and justice as possible. You see, the priests weren't only called upon to sacrifice animals. They had to make decisions and rulings, much like judges. At the center of their uniform was the Choshen Mishpat, which is literally the breastplate of judgment. And on this breastplate of judgment were stones, 12 of them, engraved with each of the 12 sons of Israel, names which were also engraved on their shoulder pads, a reminder that the priests are not to favor one tribe over another. They must judge fairly and represent all the people of the nation. We further learn that the people who create these priestly vestments can only be people who are endowed with chokhmei lev, which means wisdom of heart. People with chokhmei lev, they carry both the intellect of the mind with wisdom and the loving kindness and the emotion of heart. So this is another clear directive, that as our leaders engage in rulings, they take their cue. The creators of their garb are from those who balance their judgment with compassion. What a huge responsibility. I wonder if some of those days, those priests felt unworthy or depleted. They weren't up for the task of doing these fair rulings. We know that every priest and probably every judge can be affected by the day that they're having, by their own personal cultural backgrounds, by their biases. They are, after all, human. But by robing themselves in the collective chokhmat lev of their community, by literally shouldering the stories of their ancestors, by engraving the names of every tribe on their heart, they were reminded of their highest calling. They found their purpose and fortitude. These priests were draped in divinity. And where is one of our greatest judges, Moses, in all of this, you might ask? Well, interestingly, I thought you'd never ask, Tetzaveh is the only Torah portion since Moses was first introduced in Exodus long ago where Moses does not appear even once. The only time Moses, our leader, is missing. This Torah portion seems to be reminding us, we might know what this feels like these days. Where is our leader? It reminds us that there isn't always an anointed leader who has to lead and judge. Sometimes it's on the people. It's on us. Just a few weeks ago, the Torah portion taught us that we are to be a kingdom of priests. Every one of us. I think many of us, I'll speak for myself, doesn't feel exactly up for the task right now. We are worn down, frustrated, worried. We find fault not just in our leaders, but in each other, maybe justifiably or maybe a little too readily. We are missing the lev, the heart, in chokhmei lev, the wisdom of heart. And maybe that is making us just a little more heartless, a little less patient, a little less faithful. What we need to do is robe ourselves in our priestly responsibility. I've got the outfit for you. Try on that choshen mishpat. Protect your heart with that breastplate created by those who are chokhmei lev, so that we can all work to be a little more fair, a little more compassionate, a little kinder to each other, to find the heart in our wisdom when we sit in judgment of everyone else. And instead of engaging in schadenfreude, which happens to be, I don't know, the activity of the day, which is reveling in each other's misery, can we instead try burging? Burging is the acronym for basking in reflected glory. Burging was coined for the way that people could take immense pride and pleasure and joy in achievements that they had no part in, like their football team's win or their child's accomplishments. Basking in the reflected glory of people that you consider part of your team in some way, part of your family. Well, the last 2 years of much greater isolation has made us all feel a little less connected to all of those teams, all of our tribes, all of our communities. But the choshen mishpat that I'm inviting you to wear on your chest and on your heart carries the name of every tribe, so that we can remember all the communities who are a part of our extended circle of pride, because they're engraved on your heart. Instead of rushing to critique someone or bemoan the state of things, can we revel in the glorious resilience and strength and kindness of people that we can see from our many tribes if we just open our eyes to it? The Olympics are an excellent opportunity for Burging, by the way. I mean, I have no right to bask in the reflected glory of Nathan Chen or Chloe Kim, but I have been doing that. Team USA, they are on my breastplate. Who is on yours? A uniform might feel like it's totally superficial because it's not something that's internal. It's a cloak that you can put on and take off. But that implies something that's really important, which is that putting on this garment is a choice. We can choose to clothe ourselves in more kindness, more dignity. We can choose to feel responsible to those whose shoulders we stand upon. We can choose to remember that we are here not to just serve one tribe, but to carry the banner of all the nations on our heart. So, please, put on your uniform. Drape yourself in divinity. You are part of the kingdom of priests.